Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya, Jai Nityananda, Jai Advaita Chandra, Jai Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. We're reading today from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 4, text is number 170. Iha ki kai Krishna dridha anurag, swacha dauta vastre jaichi, nahi konda. The word for words, iha ke, this. And this is pointing back to the last verse, which I'll read right now so you know what it's demonstrative pronoun, this, pointing back to something, and here's what it is. Social customs, scriptural injunctions, bodily demands, fruitive action, shyness, patience, bodily pleasures, sense gratification, and the path of varnashram dharma, which is difficult to give up. The gopis have forsaken all these, as well as their own relatives and their punishment and scolding, for the sake of serving Lord Krishna. They render loving service to him for the sake of his enjoyment. So now we know what this is. And the translation is, this is called firm attachment to Lord Krishna. It is spotlessly pure, like a clean cloth that has no stain. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The author of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita advises everyone to give up all engagements of sense gratification and, like the gopis, dovetail oneself entirely with the will of the Supreme Lord. That is the ultimate instruction of Krishna in Bhagavad-Gita. We should be prepared to do anything and everything to please the Lord, even at the risk of violating the Vedic principles or ethical laws. That is the standard of love of Godhead. Such activities in pure love of Godhead are as spotless as white linen that has been completely washed. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur warns us in this connection that we should not mistakenly think that the idea of giving up everything implies the renunciation of duties necessary in relation to the body and mind. Even such duties are not sense gratification if they are undertaken in a spirit of service to Krishna. And for a Mangalacharan, we can chant some of the first verses of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Vande Guru Nisha Bhaktan Isha Vatarakam Tat Prakashans Tachat Shakti Krishna Chaitanya Samjakam Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gododai Pushpavanto Chitro Shando Tamodam. I offer my respectful obeisances to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who painstakingly brought to us the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and gave us the opportunity to follow Lord Chaitanya and his associates, Panchatattva and Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, in their ecstatic service to the Lord. And I offer my respectful obeisances to the author of this book, Kaviraj Goswami, and to all the assembled devotees. Ancha Kalpatarvishya, Kripa Sindhubhye Vicha, Patitana, Pavanibhyo, Vaishnavebhyo. First, can mention that the analogy here is of purity is something very practical. A white cloth so practical that I had something in my mind that just before we left for India, someone had given me a brand new t-shirt with a logo on it. And as I was getting ready, packing to come to India, I put it on. And then I rubbed up against one of those flowers called a stargazer. And once you touch a stargazer, the stain is indelible. I don't know any substance on earth that can remove the pollen. And it got right here. I tried a solvent to remove it and put it through the wash, but it still was smudged, and I thought, if I wear this, everyone will think that I was eating and I spilled something on myself. And they might, as they're walking by, think, what a slob. And analogously, for those who hold the standard that is being described here, those personalities who have no material desires, but only the desire to serve Krishna, the smallest inclination for sense gratification becomes readily apparent, and it's unbecoming, just as a smudged cloth or t-shirt. And so there are two standards, they've been mentioned earlier. Those who desire for themselves, this was compared by Kaviraj Goswami to one kind of metal, iron, and the other is like gold when one has a desire only to serve Krishna. And this is a consistent theme throughout the Bhagavad-Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, convincing those who are inclined to enjoy the world, or who have come here to enjoy the world, that it's better to change your desires to serve Krishna. Otherwise, you'll be implicated and have to suffer the results. Some of those, of course, Krishna says in the Bhagavad-Gita very helpfully and very clearly and simply, Bhoktaram Yagatapasam, that I'm the enjoyer of everything. And Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, I own everything. That's good to know. And Suridam Sarvabhutanam, also he's the best friend. It's also helpful. All three together, Krishna says, when considered, brings one to a state of peacefulness. Very practical. Last night we were reading about Sanatana Goswami getting free from his employ with the Nawab. He had started a trend which is going now on even today around the world, which is calling in sick. He told his employer that I'm sick, I can't come to work. And the Nawab sent his personal physician to see what was really going on, and it turned out there were a group of brahmanas there, and Sanatana Goswami was studying the Srimad Bhagavatam. He had already met Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and had decided that he would change his entire course of life and follow the path of Lord Chaitanya. And he had already seen the departure of his brother, Rupa Goswami, who took about a year to be able to disentangle himself from his services and leave. And Sanatan told the king that you can no longer expect me to come to work. And the king said then, you should go to jail and think it over. And of course, as we know, he was able to bribe the jailkeeper and make a path out of the kingdom of the Nawab. And as he was leaving, he came with his servant to an inn in what was described as a hilly area that he had to traverse in order to escape. And there was a palm reader who had ascertained that the two travelers, that was Sanatan and his servant, Ishana, had wealth with them. And being of low character, they had a plan that they were going to kill them and take their wealth. And Sanatana Goswami noticed that they were obsequious when they arrived. They were fawning over them and offering them greater hospitality than one would expect at a grubby little inn. And he thought, that Sanatan, being expert in diplomacy, that this is a sign of some kind of dishonesty. Too much devotion is a sign of a thief. So he asked his servant, Ishana, if he had anything. And Ishana said, I just have these 7 gold coins I brought with me. And Sanatan Goswami said, give them to me. So he took them, did Sanatan, to the innkeeper, and he said, here, this is for your services of getting me over the hills. And the innkeeper then revealed that he had a plan to kill him that very night and take the coins. He said, my palm reader had already ascertained that you had 8 gold coins with you. So that night he gave 4 watchmen to take Sanatan and Ishana a distance through the hills, and when they came to the end of it, Sanatan turned to Ishana and said, I think you have some balance. And Ishana said, yes, I have 1 more gold coin. He said, Sanatan said, you keep it, and you take that with you and go back home. And Sanatan then turned away from his servant, turned away from the watch people, and headed off towards where he hoped to meet Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it's described there in one verse that now, having given up his position, having divested himself of his last gold coins, which he didn't even know he had, and sending Ishana, his servant, back, he felt no anxiety. And is what Krishna says, Bhoktaram Jagatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suriram Sarvabhutam Gyatpamam Shantim Richiti. The reason that one isn't peaceful is because of a psychological condition called cognitive dissonance. This means deep inside I know that I can't keep anything in this world, but still I try mightily to hold on to everything. And of course we know, we recite, albeit very rapidly, every morning in most ISKCON temples, to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. But this is something that can be dealt with, and we're being invited to deal with it here. We're being given the description of those who are completely divested of the idea of trying to please themselves, and they're only dedicated to serving Krishna. And so following the ideas that Krishna gives, Bhoktaram Yagatapasam, give it to Krishna for his enjoyment, please his senses. And Prahlad Maharaj, in his prayers to Lord Nrsingadev, says, Naivatmana prabharayam nija lava purna, manam janada vidusad karano vranite, yet yashano. He says that when you give to Krishna, then you become satisfied. And in the analogy he gives, pratimukasya, that's yata mukashri, when you look in a mirror and you decorate your face, then the reflection becomes decorated also. Isn't it? Say yes. Because if you're putting on tilak, for instance, you're looking in the mirror, then the image in the mirror also is decorated with tilak. So the example he is giving here, tatschatmano, that when you dedicate your energy to Krishna and you transfer the desire that you have that all be pleased, and you think, how will Krishna be pleased? Or in this analogy, how will I decorate Krishna? Because after all, if you visit any downtown area from Cairo to Los Angeles, you'll find that most of the shops there are dedicated to clothing or food. Everyone wants to dress up. Maybe there's a perfumery and a place to cut your hair. And so people are looking in the mirror thinking, how do I look? And am I feeling satisfied? But universally, nobody's satisfied. But Prahlad Maharaj is giving us this principle that if you think different, as Steve Jobs gave the admonition for his product, think different. If you think different and you say, let me see how I can follow this idea that is being presented by the gopis, that just please Krishna's senses, where Krishna's directive, bhoktaram yat tapasam, I'm the supreme enjoyer, try to satisfy Krishna. When you do that, when you decorate Krishna, then you become decorated, you become glorified, in fact. And those who even slightly move in that direction feel a great burden lifted. After all, the idea that Rupa Goswami mentions in the Bhakti-Rasamrita Sindhu is when you take to the process of devotional service, which essentially means sarvapadi vanirmuktam tat prattvayena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchite. This is what devotional service is called. That through the 9 methods, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam, which means hearing and chanting about the holy names, forms, qualities, paraphernalia, and pastimes of the Supreme Lord, remembering them, worshiping the lotus feet of the Lord, offering 16 articles in worship of the Lord, worshiping the lotus feet of the Lord, did I say that? Becoming a servant of the Lord, making the Lord one's best friend, and also surrendering everything to the Lord, Atmanivedanam. These 9 are considered pure devotional service. And as one enters into that process, these 9 processes, which is basically all any of you do all day, right? Say yes. Yes. Just think about it. Since early this morning, that's all you've been doing, is hearing, chanting, remembering, worshiping the lotus feet, offering articles of worship to Krishna, becoming a servant, becoming a friend, offering everything to Krishna, praying. That's a vandanam. So, sarvapadi manirmuktam, if you do that, then the byproduct is the senses come back to their normal condition, which is that we will experience through our senses a sense of happiness. And the senses become purified by the process. More encouragement, thinking of Narada Muni speaking to Vyasadeva in the first canto, 5th chapter of the Bhagavatam. He gives this directive to Srila Vyasadeva. Tyaktva dharmam charanam bhujam harer bhajana pakvota patitato yadi yatra kva babadram abudam mushikim kovarta apto bhajatam sudharmata. He says, so if somebody approaches the path of devotional service and they do what's being recommended here is to give up whatever else you're doing and just take to devotional service. Would anybody object to that? Yeah, a lot of people. Yes. Yeah. Family members, maybe your employer, just like Sanatana Goswami said, you can't do that. You go to jail. But Narada Muni says, don't worry about it. Tyaktva swadharmam. If you give up what you're doing now, charanam bhujam harer, and you just say, I'm going to take these 9 processes and worship the lotus feet of Krishna. Bhajan pakvo tapatet tado yadi. And let's just say, Narada Muni says, it doesn't work out. Like you were a pakva, which means you weren't quite ready for it, but hey, you had the inspiration and you went for it. He says, what did you lose? Yatra kwa bhava abuda mushikim kovarta apto bhajatam sudana. If you tried for it, then you've gained so much. But if you had a life of following the status quo, and you kept up with the Patels or the Joneses, and you're able to maintain that status quo, he said, what did you gain anyway? You're going to lose it all. Because in the end, it's all taken back. And then he gives this philosophical background to loosen us up a little bit. He says, Tasyai viheto prayate tako vido nalabyate yad brahmatam upariyata. Talabyate dukkha vadanyata sukham kalena sarvatra kabira rambasa. He said, look at, do you ever have misery visit you in your life? That's the end of the question. It didn't sound like there's a period at the end, but I'll pose the question again. Have you ever had misery visit you in your life?
Yes.
Okay, about a third of the audience. Everybody else is in the Paramahamsa stage. And so, did you ask for it?
No.
In your Vandanam, did you say, my dear Lord, please, may the IRS or whatever other equivalent agency in the world please call me today or text me and say, we're coming over. Nobody does that, generally, and unless they're deranged. But then he points out, but did it come anyway? Yeah. So he said, in the same way, the kind of happiness that you chase in this world, it'll come on schedule, just as the miseries come. You don't have to chase it. Tasyaiva heto prayate te kovido, nalabyate yad brahmatam uparida. Talabyate dukkhavat anyata sukham, kalena sarvati. In due course of time, because time is Krishna. Krishna is very much aware of everything. He mentions in the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita that one of the ways to meditate upon him is to see him as Kavi. Right? Did he say that? You sure? Which verse? Kavim Purana Manushashitaram Anuyam Samanusmiredyaha Sarvasya Dataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varnam Tamasa Parastat. One of the ways he said we can meditate on right now is Kavi, which means the one who knows everything. That means he knows us really well. Have you ever met anybody who knows everything? Yeah, we've met on book distribution. We were going door to door in an apartment complex. It was about 11:30 in the morning, and I knocked on a door, and this very robust gentleman came out with his bathrobe on. And as soon as he saw the Bhagavad-Gita, he said, I know everything. And I called the other devotees there to meet him. I said, ask him anything, he knows. But Krishna actually knows. Kalena sarvatra gabhira ramasa. He knows everything. It's a very deep process that whatever we've done, Krishna knows. Whatever we're due, Krishna knows. So Narada Muni says, all of the superficialities of the world, the happiness, the distress that come and go, he said, don't try so hard for those. Instead, transfer your energy to these 9 processes of hearing, chanting, and remembering. And just in case one feels or uses an excuse that, but what if I don't make it? In the next verse he says, Navajano chata katanchada vrajan mukunda sevan ramadanga samsritin smaran mukundang Krupanuhanam punar ihatami chenna graho janad rasajano jana. Jana means person, and rasa graha means that if somebody takes to devotional service and they have that experience of hearing and chanting and remembering Krishna, and they've entertained the idea, as Krishna has recommended in the Bhagavad-Gita, to surrender to me. If you've ever tried this, I highly recommend it. Just sit and meditate on that verse. There's a commentary in which our acharyas say that the devotees are so thankful to Krishna for speaking this verse, and they consider that more valuable than their own lives. Sarvadharman parityaja, if you contemplate the verse and think, well, what if I just did surrender everything to Krishna? If you think about it. And Prabhupada gave a simple example when somebody asked him, but what if, well, how do you do that? And Prabhupada said, it's simple. If you're a poor person, that is, you don't have anything, and you have to sleep outside, and somebody brings you a huge bag of money, and the person has goodwill towards you and says, take it. Prabhupada said, then what are your choices? Let's count them up together. You can use ChatGPT if you need to. What are the choices? Okay, we have one proposition here, take it. And what's the other one? The other one is, don't take it. It's binary. Take it or don't take it. So Prabhupada said, if a man comes, you might think strings attached. But if Krishna comes and says, I'll take care of all your affairs, and here's a bag of money, then you might think about taking it. That sarvadharma parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja. So this verse Narada speaks is that, so if you take it and you're not able to fully embrace it, even if you surrender once, said then Krishna will be so grateful that you tried that he will remind you again and again. Rasagraha means that you'll be grabbed by the taste that you had when you realized how sweet it is to actually surrender to Krishna and to give everything to him. Rasagraha actually means, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that you'll be haunted by the ghost of rasa. It'll come and remind you as you're toiling in the world that, remember how sweet it was when you surrendered to Krishna, and how Krishna embraced you and brought you into the process. Finally, there's a point at the end of the purport, not that I've exhausted all the other points, but we can discuss. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur warns us, Prabhupada says, to not give away things that we need for the service of the Lord. This comes in a directive in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, first of all, what does it mean? It means always chant Hare Krishna and perform the 9 processes of devotional service. But for most people, if you tell them that, then they'll think that it's too difficult. Therefore, our acharyas say, at least once a day, finish your sadhana. And then it's mentioned also that there are certain things that we need to stay alive in order to do our service. This is also mentioned in the Sri Upanishad. Ishavasam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat. You finish my verses for me. Tena tyak tena bunjita means that the Lord has set aside certain things that you need. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, don't think renunciation means giving up things that you need for performing devotional service. It's mentioned also in the dialogue that Vasudeva has with Kamsa. Remember that one? During the wedding day? And Kamsa wanted to kill Devaki. It's mentioned there that it's your duty to try to stay alive. and not be killed. So he did his duty. So we have a body, we have a few things. We should keep those things that we use for Krishna. That's Bhaktivinoda Thakur's point. And when we embrace this, then we can take up the doctrine that I like to call preemptive giving. Would you like to hear the doctrine of preemptive giving?
Yes.
I guarantee you're going to like it. So only one person said yes. 2, 3, 4. Everybody else, cover your ears. It means that, well, first I'll tell a story. When I arrived for Kartik, circa 2002, following the strictures for entering a dham, I went to take a bath in a holy kund on the Parikram mark at Govardhan. And I put down my belongings on the bank, such as they were, donned a gamsha, went in the water, said prayers, came back, and all my stuff was gone. And in India, when your stuff's gone, it is really gone. I interviewed the monkeys, they didn't take it, and it was just there 1 minute and then gone the next. And so all I had left was just the gamsha. And I had to walk home all the way back to the ashram, which was another 4 or 5 miles. And I did my best imitation of being a sadhu, walking along with nothing, just a gamsha. But I had this sense that as soon as I get back into the ashram, this was the first day I was there, unlike most years when I wait until the last day and I would go to the temple president and give a donation for staying in the ashram. I thought as soon as I get in the door, if it's still there, I'm going to give my donation today. And I did so wearing a gamsha, and the temple president was surprised because he said, "What's the hurry?" And it was fresh in my mind that yes, there's a great hurry because at any time, anything can be taken. Because actually it's not ours. We can consider it to be more like a Uber. You don't get do you have an Uber here? You don't, unless you want to get a really bad rating, you don't get in the Uber and then claim that it's your car, right? Say yes.
Yes.
And also, if you have an Airbnb, you don't start changing stuff because they get really upset because it's not yours. It's the same thing. Here in this world, tena tyaktena bunjita, nothing is ours. It's set aside for our use for a short amount of time to use in Krishna's service. So the idea I had in my mind was, if I give it away before it's taken away, then I get full credit, right?
Yes.
If I wait till it's taken, I'm just like everybody else. And Prabhupada once said, something that stuck in my mind, he said, you have to cheat death before death cheats you. And for those who are financial accountants, I don't know if there's any other kind. I guess there is. We know the tax codes. Generally speaking, rich people don't have anything. If you look at their financials, you'll look and it looks like they don't own anything. They fly in jets, that's not theirs. They live in an apartment, that's not mine. They have a huge fund of money, but that belongs to the company. I don't have anything. So how much tax do they pay? Accountants? Or is everybody an engineer? Accountant, how much do they pay? 0 or jiro. Because they don't have anything. And this is the idea of Krishna consciousness in one sense also, is that I don't have anything, it's all Krishna's. And whatever I hold on to will be taken, and then I'm cheated by the process of material nature. But if I preemptively donate it all to Krishna, whatever I have, it's all belongs to Krishna. Manasa deho geho yo kichu more. Bhaktivinoda Thakur saying, All this stuff, house, what else does he name? My mind, my family, donated. It all belongs to Krishna. Then that's reality. And then one is situated properly. Bhaktivinoda is also saying, Jiv Krishna Das E Bishwas Korleto Ardukonai. If you want to be free from unhappiness, then just preemptively sign everything off to Krishna. Say it all belongs to Krishna, and I'm just the servant. I just work here. But it's nothing is mine. How do you like the doctrine of preemptive giving? On a scale of 1 to 10. You're just saying that. It is good though, because if you're ever in a situation where, let's just say, you had something you intended to give and you held it a little too long, you're thinking about it an extra hour, and then all of a sudden someone comes along and says, we need that money. We're going to have to, like your family member says, one of your cousins is ill and you're the only one in the family that has money and we're going to have to take that, or you lose it and it's just gone. So the more we can live in this mood of dedicating everything to Krishna and using, as Prabhupada says here, dovetailing our senses in his service, then we'll have a spotlessly clean life. The only spot that's there is the very unseemly desire that I'll just keep something for myself. And that may seem extreme, and we do keep something for ourselves, but we only consider it as facility to serve Krishna. Those are a few preliminary remarks, and now if you have questions that you feel will expand the conversation in a helpful way, then please bring them up and we'll discuss.
I'm very thankful that you gave this very wonderful explanation. When someone is in business ashram, it's evident that he needs to give up money, he needs to give away those things to Krishna. Can you explain about all other ashrams what we need to give to Krishna in that?
In all other ashrams?
Yeah.
You mean like the brahmachari ashram?
Yeah.
Well, I lived as a brahmachari for 13 years, and I could say that it was simply joyful. So all I had was service, friendships, a little kitri with some mango pickle, and once in a while a papadum, and a place to lie down, and what a joy it was. I remember my father came to visit the ashram in St. Louis, Missouri, where I was stationed for a couple of years. And he came to the Mangalartik. And we were young, we were in our 20s, and it was 4:30 a.m. And we were dancing so hard that the floor was rocking. It was an old building. And I remember he wrote me a letter afterwards and said, "What an amazing life you live. It's so joyful." And when we have only service as our asset and association and the opportunity to hear and chant, then this is joyful life. Of course, that can be achieved in any ashram. Ashrama means, you know what shrama means, right? Even if you don't know, it doesn't sound good. Shrama. What'd you end up with? Shrama. It sounds like. And that's what Shrama Evi Kevalam. It said, Dharma Swanustita Pumsam Vishvaksena Katasu Yad Notpadi Yadidiratim. Shrama Evi Kevalam. Sudha Goswami says, if you're in this world doing this, that, and the other thing, and you think that you're getting somewhere, if you didn't get some bhakti out of it, then it's just useless labor. Shrama is useless labor. So what's ashrama? Ashrama is the place where no wasted labor, no shrama, ashrama. And if you have that ethos, wherever you are, that you set up everything, organize it around hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna, the 9 processes, then the ashrams are equal. Although there's a lot to learn in each one, and every one of us has to go through various phases in our life, and the ashramas are extremely accommodating to give us a continuity throughout our lives that we can continue hearing, chanting, and learn the lessons we need to learn at various phases. I probably said more than you asked for, but did I even answer your question? Yeah, the ashramas are good. Okay, a few more questions. The objective is to expand the conversation or get something more out of this. Yes, Prabhu. There's a very ecstatic-looking devotee straight back at 12 o'clock.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the wonderful class. Can you elaborate on the statement of Srila Prabhupada, the death before death, cheat?
Yeah. You like that? Yeah, you have to be dexterous. Dexterous means that you're expert. You look it up. See the etymology behind it. But it means to be expert at something, and so use this life very wisely. It's amazing if you can use the human life, says, what is it? Hridehamadyam sulabham sadulabham plavam sukalpam. The other one, labbam sadulabham idam bahusam bhavante manusha martanam anityam apihatira. This is the Avaduta Brahman. He says, it's so rare to get a human form of life, but it's fantastic because although it's temporary, you can parlay the temporary use card that you have in this life into something eternal. And you just can't beat that. You can change it. And it's an added pleasure that you get to cheat death. That comes up when Dhruv Maharaj goes back to Godhead. And they're all lined up. Death comes and he steps on Death's head and jumps in the plane back to Vaikuntha. That's adding a little flair to going back to Godhead. Step on Death's head. And where's my mom? She gets to come too. She's in the other plane. They both went back to Godhead. So if you think of it as a challenge to expertly use the ayu, we all get some ayu, we don't know what it is, to parlay the temporary use permit that we have for this body, which can be revoked at any minute. And we can get an eternal card, access all areas. Then that's really smart. The smartest thing you can do. And that's what makes life exciting. Otherwise it's drudgery, isn't it? Just working hard for shrama, and all you get at the end is cheated, everything taken back. We're going to cheat death, right? Say yes. That's it? Say Hari Hari. And then we want to help other people too. That's another wonderment, is that everyone's walking around in trance. And when the light changes, they got to go. That's 3 modes of material nature. They have green, yellow, and red. And everyone just follows. Okay, light change, go. Everyone just goes and does whatever the modes tell them. So it's the most intriguing of all services is to interject into the lives of those who have no idea about preemptive giving the opportunity to give to Krishna. We're there to accept it on behalf of Krishna, right? Say yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we do. We go out and we'll take it. In fact, it's somebody brought it up last night in one of our discussions we were having about when we go out to ask for donations. And I mentioned in that discussion that the way I've come to ask people for donations, for instance, in return for a beautiful book about the spiritual world, is I tell them that I don't need the money. The donation's for you. Because when you give, it gives you, it's kind of penance, I tell them. When you give, then it gives you the qualification to enter into the book and read it. And so that's what Krishna recommends in the Bhagavad-Gita. He says, you should just think of me all the time. If you can't think of me, practice thinking of me. If you can't do that, then give away what you're earning. Some of it anyway, and see how you feel. Because right before you give something, especially money, right? You think, oh no, well maybe I'll give a little less. And you go back and forth in your mind, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. And your mind's telling you out of fear that you give that and you might die or starve or you'll go without. But Krishna wants us to start somewhere to give, because when we start giving, what's the first thing you feel after you give the donation? You actually let it out of your hand. How do you feel? Better or worse? Better. Because you give it and then you go, oh good. Not only did I let it out of my hand, but now I'm still alive. I lived through it. But there's also a sense that the universe is totally abundant. And Krishna also encourages us in the Gita, Ananyas chintayantam mam yejana paripasate, tesham nityabhyuktanam yogakshemam mahamyaham. If you're so busy serving me that you have no other concern, said, don't worry, I'll just personally take care of it. I'll cover everything for you. No problem. And people don't know that. They're toiling hard. So introducing that to the world, the concept that after he says, give some of your money, he said, if you can't do that for social reasons, then just try to volunteer somewhere and see how you feel by volunteering. A lot better than being a fruitive worker. Have time for 1.5, 2 questions. Yes, Simran. Right here in front.
I find it difficult to connect with the idea of pleasing Krishna's senses when I'm going about daily activities, because I don't yet have the realization that Krishna is a natural person. So could you elaborate on?
That's why deity worship's important, because in our Pancha Samskar, we have tapas, which means we turn away from the material world, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, think this isn't my prospect, nothing here for me. And then Pondra means that we identify ourselves as Vaishnavas. Then we take nama, we take a new name and we take a vow for the name. Then we take mantra initiation, and from mantra initiation, we go into yaga, or deity worship. It's so important, the Panchrach system. In fact, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, Kaviraj Goswami points out that Hare Krishna, you can chant, you don't need initiation. It's totally liberated sound vibration, and you can do it. But then if you read the purport, Jiva Goswami says, no, you have to take initiation. Why? Because you need the Panchrach system alongside, and these two things go together. Chanting Hare Krishna, hearing Bhagavat, preaching, and the Panchrach Vidhi. And in the Panchrach Vidhi, we get to see the form of Krishna. Within the form of Krishna, Swayam Bhagavan Krishna, all the incarnations are there. He's the source of everything. So when we come and see the deity, we bow before the deity, we bring a flower, we offer, or when we're introduced to the regulations of the Panchratric and we actually get to do deity worship, then you start feeling this relationship with Krishna's senses, because in a very otherworldly way, when you put Krishna to rest at night, there's nobody else around, and you bring some kheer and a flower, and Krishna's there, tuck him into bed, give him a little something. You see his beautiful smile, Kapila Dev says. The deity's there, you see the beautiful smile, and you feel satisfied, and you feel the relationship with Krishna. There's a devotee Rasagya Devi Dasi, who lived in New York City, who was she did Pujari work for Radha Govinda. New York gets freezing cold. And in the wintertime, she would dress the deities, but she'd turn the iron on, and before she'd put Radha Govinda's clothes on, she'd warm them up with the iron before they touched the body of the Lord. And she was so invested in that sensual experience of pleasing Krishna's senses that it gave her this intimate sense of connection to Krishna's senses. So this deity worship, if you're bathing the Lord and you watch, there's some honey or milk, and then a tulsi leaf slides down Krishna's cheek and it sticks right here, or on his lotus foot. And you're in an environment that's pristine. There's nobody allowed in there that hasn't done the work. They don't let people in the pujari room unless they've proved that, they're getting rid of all the spots. No slobs, like, the t-shirt with the food on it. And then in that environment, you have this communion with Krishna where you realize, oh, I really like serving Krishna's senses. Let me do it more. Then it becomes spontaneous and you start thinking of, I want to get a new outfit for him. I want to get up earlier, Prabhupada says in the next devotion, and do something extra. And we have that story of, who was it with the coconuts? Raghava Pandit, who was so invested in finding the best coconuts in Bengal that he would go 20, 40 miles to other villages. Although there were millions of coconuts in his area, he wanted to find the best coconuts. That was his meditation. And then it brings this mood that Prabhupada expresses when he talks about deity worship. He says, everything should be first class. And then he goes, better than first class. And that's where you want to live. Because in serving Krishna in his senses, you'll feel it that, okay, I brought something nice to Krishna. I went out of my way to find the nicest thing I could. Then, just like that verse from Prahlad Maharaj said, you decorate Krishna, you're decorated. And then you're like, I don't need anything. I decorated Krishna, I feel satisfied. And that's the life of the devotee. All for Krishna, nothing for me. That's actually real selfishness because Krishna's the soul of our soul. And if we realize that, then we're in luck because we've got an eternal life ahead of us that's ever increasing joy and the real sense gratification that everybody's not getting in the material world. We're getting it in ever increasing quantities from chanting his name, from doing all the 9 processes. And that brings us to the very end of our class. And dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Shri Shri Gaura Nitai, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram, Shri Shri Radhe Shyam, if you so desire, please give us the wherewithal to perform the 9 processes of devotional service as our life and soul. And please let our main objective in life to be to please His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the great Vaishnavas, and your lotus feet. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer in whole or in part. Please unmute and say Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Gaur Premanande.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare